Let us start with the bind method of the JavaScript. So the bind method is the predefined method of the JavaScript, just like the call and the apply method, and it is used to bind an object to a function and creates a new function. And unlike the call and the apply method of the JavaScript that takes the parameter as an owner object and call the function and executes the statements, the bind method will simply bind the object but doesn't call the function. You have to call manually. It simply attach the object to the function and then reference the attach object using this keyword and make the object property accessible as an owner object. And depending on the context of the object, this value will access the properties, whatever object has been binded at that particular span of time. And in all the three cases, call, apply, and bind, the value of this is dynamically changes depending on the object we pass. The only difference is that call and apply is simply bind the object and immediate calls the method. But when we are using the bind, then it will simply bind the object and you have to call the method, your function, manually. Let us see with the example. So what we are trying to do, we have created a method, a function called print values, and there we are trying to bind the value of x and y that will be corresponding to this scope and making it display in this particular divid by the use of inner HTML. And what we have to focus is the use of bind method. So we have print value function that is already there, and inside this we are accessing this dot x and this dot y, and we have not defined and we are not sure what are these parameter value will be, and these object, these parameter will come from outside. So what we are doing, we are creating this object having the property x and y with some value, and we are binding it to this function. And the new function has been created, something like when we are calling this function, then you can say something like this has been created, whatever the value is. So something like this function is getting called inside of print value function. Now let me just run this HTML file in browser. So buttons are coming like this. We have to give some value. Let me just add this value over here in between the tags opening and closing. So we have now two buttons, and when we are calling coordinate 1, so it is sending the value x and y to be 10 and 20, and these 10 and 20 are coming and assigned in this object, and from this object we are binding this to this function, and this function is accessing these values of the object with the help of this keyword. And what this represent the owner of the object. That means it is not considered as the outside parameter, it is simply considered as its own properties. So this is the benefit of using the bind method, which is giving you the opportunity to create the separate context that having the different values. So when we are calling coordinate 2, then this has been changed with some different object that is coming from some other source. If you want to just make more clarity, let me just change it to 1 and 2, and let me just copy and paste here 1 and 2. I don't need to pass the parameters. I am saying the value of x here is 10 and here is 20. and here let's say 30, let's say 40. So when this part of application is executing, when this part of application is executing with this function, so it simply creates its own object and binding it to this function. And when this part of application is executed, then it is binding this particular object and call this function after binding this object. And we are not only calling these methods by binding these kind of object. What if suppose I am saying I have not only x and y, I have height and the width. I am trying to print the height and width something like this. So let me again refresh this page and see height and width that is changing according to the coordinates that we are passing. Now I am saying this is user defined let's say user defined values, and this is screen value. So here I'm not passing the object, I am just passing this dot screen. So here now this particular screen object has been binded to this function. Now let's see what it is printing for now. So I have to change here also, and we are saying it screen values. Let me just print user defined values, that is height 10, width 20. When I am clicking on screen value, it is printing height 768 and width this one. So this is coming from this object, that is global object, and you can see when I am going to inspect the element and I am typing this. So this is the window, that is the global object. This dot screen is also an object that contains the several properties related to the screen. Height is this one, width is 1366. So when I am clicking here, I am getting height and width, that is the object this dot screen. So you are not limited to these kind of objects. You can pass any kind of object and you can bind any kind of object with the help of bind method and make it accessible from your function by accessing its property like an owner of this object and access with the help of this keyword. So that's all for now. Thank you so much.